Check it out. We're in Cannes. Well, not exactly Cannes. Cavalier, which is about an hour away by farm track. But let's not split hairs. We've flown in to meet Luke Hutchins, literary agent extraordinaire. So if you ever actually get to read this rather than watching this video blog, then that presumably means that he likes it. Now, for those of you who wanted to enter the competition to decipher the vicar's weird comments I misheard on the Betsy, a formal kennel with the arses are now on empty, I've got the official version straight from the horse's mouth, as it were. The vicar assures me that Camilla Freiherr's father was apparently a former colonel with the SAS and now an MP. I'm tempted to say that. I think my version is more interesting. Anyway, nosy, grindstone. Back to the boring old story before we lose the plot. It gets pretty surreal. Before we left to come here, I went to use the photocopier in The Place We Do Not Talk About. And guess what? In the next chapter, the vicar and I are going to do exactly the same thing. Cool, huh? Yeah. In fact, the other day while I was there, photocopying the vicar's business plan for these psychodelicious chronicles, I did a quick photocopy of my what's-it. Yeah, we don't need to talk about that now. Yeah, or perhaps we do. I mean, what makes a grown man do something like that? Did I want to make up for the Christmas party when all the girls were photocopying their pert little bottoms? Or is there something more complex going on? Maybe it's... Sorry about that. The vicar just walked in. Perhaps we really had better get back to the story. Okay, chapter 6. Remember that dark cloud that was hanging over the vicar? I think it's fair to say that it burst the day after the boat party. I met him standing outside The Place We Do Not Talk About, 30 Pembridge Lane, Notting Hill, one tube stop from my flat, with his eyes closed, breathing deeply. "We English are inclined to grasp at the clouds and ignore the silver lining," he said at last. "But I must confess even I am struggling to find a way to turn this seeming disadvantage into an advantage." He started to walk into the building, but as his foot was about to touch the step, he stopped. "I know you don't believe in feng shui as I do, but I should warn you that this is not a happy space. It is filled by not one but two very powerful, malevolent personalities." He closed his eyes again. He then opened them and smiled. "But I have promised to do this as a favour to Sean, and, no doubt, his Irish luck and the stench of Guinness will protect us. Onward!" He thrust his arm into the air and pulled open the door. Unfortunately, things did not improve as we entered the lobby. The first thing that the vicar saw was the original artwork from his first album, hanging on the wall in bright sunlight. "That picture!" he said to the nearest available body, so angry that he could barely speak. "What complete idiot hung it in full sunshine? Look how the colours have already faded. That is both a classic work of art and a piece of rock and roll history. Move it, or I'll come and take it down myself. Can this company not be trusted to do anything properly?" His lips were pushed so tightly together that they were little more than a thin line. "I'm sorry, who should I say is here?" "I am the vicar, here much against my better judgment, to produce a live radio show with the Glamour Twins. I assume the beautiful boys are in the studio." The body twitched to get up. "No, thank you. Stay where you are. I know my way, unless the studio got up and moved in the last 7 years. And it looks to me as though nothing much has moved in here for a long time." All of this impending doom may seem a little extreme. All we were doing was entering an office building. Admittedly, it was the one still shared in separate parts by Malvolio and Breamore, but how bad could that be? It was one of those times when you wish you knew then what you know now. Little did I realise that it was not so much Malvolio's presence, all spit together, as Breamore's that was troubling the vicar. "We are embattled, punk. Embattled persecution, that is what the English do well, and as ever, we shall triumph against the odds. I shall put that in my letter to Breamore." I still had not got a clue what he was talking about. He pushed open the door to an empty studio, a simple, dirty affair, nothing more than a few tables and chairs in a drab brown room. It obviously saw more use as a games room, as there was a Sky Electrics track running around the walls. "An uncreative space." The vicar ran his finger along one of the tops and looked at the dust. "I tell you, the soul has gone out of this whole building." He'd taken a paper towel out of his pocket and began to clean the tops. 7 years ago, they brought in a table tennis table, and I knew that that would be the end of the company. It invites a confusion between work and play. And now this. He pointed to the track. This was not the time to tell him about modern views on labour relations or about the 30-yard, 6-lane Sky Electrics track at Universal Studios in LA. "Still, it will do. Set up your box of delights in that corner and work your magic from there." He looked around. "Fortunately, it would appear that the pretty boys are not here yet. I'm afraid I shall have to leave you to get all plugged up by yourself. He picked up his laptop.
I have an urgent letter to write to Breamore in reply to a happy little tome that I received from him by courier this morning.
And with that, he headed out of the door again, leaving me the perfect opportunity to secrete my video camera behind the console. Any chance to add to my collection of indiscreet footage, gratefully accepted. Now, I didn't get to read that famous letter until much later, as by the time the vicar returned, brandishing it in his hand, Alex and Chris, the pretty boys, had arrived, bringing with them several crate loads of LPs and a turntable, 2 woolly hats, but no musical instruments. Welcome to the new generation of DJ musicians.
Good morning, boys,
the vicar said as he walked through the door, greeting them both with his customary left-handed greeting.
A moment to gather our thoughts, perhaps.
He used his hand to dust off a chair for each of them and went through his normal routine, except that this time he sat still and silent for what seemed like an eternity.
So,
he said finally as he thrust his arm in the air,
it would be best to put all our cards openly on the table. I only agreed to produce this radio show as a personal favour to Sean Fitzpatrick, A&R hero of the First Order and frequent saviour of my vegetarian bacon.
He looked at them to gauge their reaction.
I very much doubt that I am first on your shopping list either, but since we are together, let us make it worthwhile. If ever I was in the need of the divine healing presence of music,
he cupped his hand and looked up to the heavens.
It is today. When Malvolio planned this live radio concert, what exactly did he think you would play?
Alex scratched his beard. Oh, he told us what to play. Play the last album off the CD player and just spin a few samples over the top.
Malvolio's thoughts are grimly inevitable and inevitably grim. Such safe options are death by a sweeter name.
The 2 young rock stars looked at him.
Let us embrace this live radio show as an opportunity for a spectacular creative leap.
Spectacular, Alex commented. In your 20s, nothing's spectacular. Babies can be perfect. Teenagers can be happy. After that, it's all downhill. I could see that we were in for a happy day. And why, Mr. God's fucking cock, would we want to do any of this anyway? Alex added, taking off his sunglasses and preening like a rock star before tipping over backwards in his chair and starting to laugh at himself.
Why not? Besides, it's the only way you can afford me. At my normal rates, you certainly could not, and I am not going to demean myself by going cheap.
The vicar struck a similarly haughty pose.
So, pay me in music, a truly creative leap, one for which the outcome is wonderfully insecure and totally hazardous.
They looked at each other and shrugged.
Good. So, if for one night only you could play anything, what would it be?
Russian, Alex said, taking some LPs from such exotic names as Pushkin Boombeat, Hun Her 2 and Malarizha, which is how the famous Russian session by the Glamour Twins was born. Any lingering thoughts that I had of the vicar's mysterious letter to Breamore were soon lost in the magic of the moment. It was fascinating to watch the vicar take samples of these recordings, distill their essence, twist them around and help Alex and Chris create the building blocks they needed. The vicar was having a blast, and yet he never imposed himself on them. The music was born from Alex and Chris. He simply encouraged them to look in places that were unfamiliar to them, and that the further and further away that they went from any territory they knew, the more exciting it became. After 3 or 4 hours of intensive work, the 3 of them did a trial run-through of the radio show and recorded it onto DAT. It was astounding. One of those moments, as the vicar would say, when
the heavens open and music leans over and takes you into its confidence.
Inspired and inspiring, it joined East and West, visiting places dark and light, poignant and terrifying. Moscow, transplanted into the heart of the English countryside, accompanied by the urban rhythms of New York, was just one of the many reviews. Thinking back, the vicar's performance that day was even more astounding, once you realise that he was doing this while conducting his own private war with Breamore. It was not until after 3 o'clock, when we stopped for late lunch, that I got my first chance to glance at the vicar's long letter to Breamore, complete with a yellow post-it note saying,
"Please photocopy and circulate to all concerned. Yo V."
It took little more than the first sentence for me to forget all about the session we had just completed.